This is Views and News with Clarence Ford.
Only on Cape Talk.
This is, of course, that opportunity that we have on a weekly basis. We're so lucky to have that interaction with a scientist that I think restores the logic in our arguments and, of course, gets us to benefit from the wonderful insights and breakthroughs that science have brought. Chris Smith, a naked scientist, consultant virologist at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. Welcome back. It's great to have you.
Good morning, Clarence. How are you?
Can't complain, thank you. A little worried about you and all the heat that's going down in your part of the world.
Yeah, suddenly got really warm. Last weekend it was sort of 30 degrees or thereabouts, so suddenly unseasonably warm. Some parts of the country even warmer than that, actually. And it stayed hot and sweaty all week. Here we are talking about the weather doing that very British thing, but apparently it's going to cool down again. So that was summer, did that this week. Now we're back to the dreadful weather we were having. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we were complaining it was really cold, and just a week before that it was about 10 or 11 degrees, and then suddenly up to 30. The weather is certainly doing strange things at the moment.
Yeah, and they are expecting another record-breaking summer for Europe. So you better brace.
Yeah.
You're going to look like me in no time.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, you're a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best.
Well, in a couple of million years with this kind of weather, the summers that you have, you're going to look like me. Okay. One of our listeners, the kettle broke down, needed to boil the water in the microwave. Argues that the water tastes different when boiled in the microwave. Can you confirm that?
Interesting question, this one. In essence, you're not doing any different. If you boil water, you're boiling water. And you shouldn't really notice any tractable difference. But it's worth bearing in mind that when you boil water in a kettle, you are going to probably remove more salts. Because when you put water, especially hard water, in certain parts of South Africa, a lot of dolomitic limestone in South Africa, and therefore the water's quite hard, it's got a lot of what we call temporary hardness, which is calcium bicarbonate, which is dissolved carbonates. When you put that water in a kettle, the element is much higher than the water boiling temperature in order to push energy into the water, and it will decompose the bicarbonates and cause scale in the kettle. That's the white crusty stuff that builds up around the kettle element, and you make the water a bit less hard in the process. So you are removing some calcium, you are removing the so-called temporary hardness from the water, and this may have a subtle influence on taste, so that might be part of it. Also, the kinds of vessels that people use when they boil water in a kettle, use a metal kettle often. People don't necessarily put a metal kettle in a microwave. They would put a ceramic mug, and the drinking vessel has a strong influence on our perceived taste as well. So there's probably both a chemical argument but also a psychological argument for why things might taste a bit different. There might be less uniformity of the heating in a microwave. You get hot spots and cold spots, so not all the water with all of its components will reach the same temperature in a microwave, etc., etc. So there are going to be differences, but if it were all made equal with all the water reaching the same temperature and boiling, the kettle microwave shouldn't make a difference, with the exception of possibly removing some of the temporary hardness.
So the microwave water would put some added, scale into your coffee?
No, I mean, people argue that if you've got a cup of tea and it's gone cold, don't throw it away, boil the kettle and use loads more energy and loads more water again. Just put the cup of tea or the cup of coffee in the microwave. That's perfectly reasonable to do that. But be careful, because you will get hot spots. When you put a body of water, a fluid, in a microwave oven, it won't produce uniform heating, and you won't get the normal convection pattern that you do with a kettle. And so you can get one patch of the water which is extremely hot, way beyond the boiling point of water, and that might sound counterintuitive, but what happens is the pressure of the surrounding water means the energy doesn't spread out in the same way. And when you disturb the profile of the water, for instance, you put a spoon in to stir it, you can then mix the water up and it will expand very suddenly and boil in that one particular place, and it can spray you with boiling hot water. So be very careful about doing that, but it's reasonable to put a cup of tea or coffee in a microwave and carefully zap it for a bit to warm it up. That will not affect the flavour of your tea or coffee. But if you took pure water out of a tap and you boiled it in a kettle and boiled it in a microwave, because of the heating element effect in a kettle, you may remove some of the calcium, and that may that may contribute to a change in the flavour profile. You'll certainly get more scum on tea, and that may in turn, because the tannins will all stick to the calcium salts that are not there in the kettle, but will be from the microwave, and that might have some of the effects that's being documented here.
Leon has a question about water and how best to consume it. I know I say a little prayer of gratitude and of love, but Dr. Chris has written me off as a nutter long ago. Leon's question is, how long does it take the body to process pure water? And should you rather sip a glass of water or should you just gulp it down? What is more advantageous?
Well, your stomach is a big bag which undergoes what we call receptive relaxation. The more you put into the stomach up to a point, the more it stretches because the surface is crinkly. So it's a bit like your brain is crinkly to pack more into the space. Your stomach can unfurl itself and stretch, and therefore it has quite a big capacity. You can get a couple of litres in a stomach, no problem. And the purpose of the stomach is to act as a temporary reservoir and then squeeze stuff down into your small intestine, which is where the vast majority of the absorption happens. The stomach is largely an impervious bag full of acid, which is there to hold things, begin the process of digestion and kill off microbes, and then your small bowel is where the absorption happens. And the stomach dispenses its contents into the small intestine in small aliquots or doses. So it doesn't matter if you drink a lot of water quickly or a lot of water more slowly, the stomach is going to regulate the flow into your intestine, and that in turn is going to regulate absorption, which in turn distributes the water around your body via the bloodstream. So if you really overdo it, then obviously you're going to distend your stomach, and that's going to feel uncomfortable. But in the grand scheme of things, with average volumes of fluid, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. If you're really dehydrated, it will get in or begin to get in really quite quickly and make you feel better.
A couple of water-related questions. Tell us about holy water, and can a lot of water cause kidney problems?
Well, in fact, not a lot of water will cause kidney problems. If you spend your life not drinking enough, then you can have poor urine or a paucity of urine flow. This increases possibly the chance of things like stones building up. It increases the chance of infection because urine pushes and cleanses the pipes of things, debris, other materials every time you go for a wee. And if you don't pass urine frequently, particularly in women, it's more common in women than men because they have a shorter urethra, but this actually will contribute as a risk factor for getting more infections. So drinking regularly and making sure that you've got as much coming in as is going out is important. And a good guide to that is what colour's your pee. If your pee's a nice light colour, I say nice, it's a light colour, then you're probably drinking enough. If it's a dark colour or getting darker and a darker yellow, this is because your kidneys are working harder to concentrate your urine and pull more water back into the body, arguing you're a bit water deficient. So that's a sign, a visual sign, drink a bit more.
Holy water, any comments? It is just water.
Well, holy water's water that has been blessed, hasn't it? So someone's said some prayers and endowed it with some Holy Spirit, but not of the alcoholic variety. No, there's nothing special about holy water other than its religious connection.
Okay, right. I'm expecting the Catholics to have a follow-up question, especially. Dr. Smith, omega-3 fish oil supplements, yes or no for healthy, moderately active adults who don't eat any fish? Are they worth the money, or are they doing more harm than good for this group of people, given latest research?
Well, what we're referring to here are essential fatty acids. There are lots of fats that we make in our body, and we build them up by linking carbon atoms together, but there are some fat configurations that the body cannot make itself. They are therefore essential in your diet because as you can't make them, you need to eat them. If you don't eat a food source with them in, then you will become deficient in them, and this can contribute to poorer health. So either you eat the thing that's got it in, and fish is a really good source of some of these essential fatty acids, or, and this includes omega-3 fatty acids, or you take supplements, which actually are usually made from things like fish and algae and so on that actually make these things. And as long as you have them in your diet, one way or another, then your body can absorb them and use them where it needs to.
Okay, we got a voice note in. Let's go to Grant's voice note.
One of my narcissist friends reckons he farts in the shower because it lasts longer. Why is this?
Right, okay, so why do farts linger longer in the shower, or why do they smell worse in the bath is the other variant on this question. I think the reason is that when you're in a shower, usually you have the doors closed and the curtain pulled across, so you have more limited airspace, and you don't have any trousers on. Most people don't shower clothed, and therefore the fart very quickly issues from inside your body to outside your body and is dispensed into a small volume of air, the shower cubicle, with fewer air changes temporarily and quite quickly, being probably a warm fart with rising updraft in the shower. Because if you think about it, the downdraft caused by the water pushing the air down in the shower causes corresponding rising air currents in the shower, and the steam from the warm water is also carrying the air upwards. This carries the fart upwards at fairly high concentration in that blob of air, because it's all come out very quickly, unimpeded by pants and trousers, straight up to you, and you notice it, and then it quite quickly goes, thank goodness. Same in the bath. If you think about it, the fart issues, comes up as a series of bubbles, bloop, 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 and is deposited straight into your face, especially if you're sitting up in the bath. And therefore you get a high concentration of fart gas very, very quickly, straight upwards into you. So you tend to notice it more, but then it does disperse after that, thank goodness, if you're still conscious and can notice it.
Another question about water. What is better for your body, drinking cold water, room temperature, or lukewarm?
There's not really a huge difference. What's good for your body is staying adequately hydrated, because some people argue, well, don't drink a cup of tea on a hot day because you need to cool down. Actually, the amount of energy you will be able to lose from your body through enabling your body to lose heat efficiently through diverting blood to your skin and sweating is far greater than the amount of energy that made the cup of tea hot. So therefore, drinking is the rule of the day to stay well hydrated. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference whether it's hot water or cold water. Drinking cold water can increase your metabolism a bit more, because your body senses that something cold has come in, and it might say, I need to compensate for the cold, therefore I'll increase metabolism a bit. So it might contribute to a slightly higher rate of burning calories, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a massive amount of difference.
Neil says, please ask the Naked Scientist whether he has a theory about who built the megalithic structures in Cusco, Peru. They could not have been built by the Incas, says Neil.
Yeah, I mean, archaeologists are fascinated by these early American civilizations who did amazing things. They clearly spent a lot of time looking at the stars, because some of the things are effectively sundials or star maps, and respond to where our closest star, the sun, is in the sky at certain times of the year. So they were clearly a very intelligent bunch of people, and they were very connected to nature. But in the same way that we don't actually know how the pyramids were built, we can only hypothesize. It's, I think, quite similar with what was going on in South America. I'm not a huge expert on the archaeology of it, but I am in awe of what they achieved.
Dagmar writes, please ask Dr. Smith to explain how the body knows how to send food and drink down the correct pipe in your throat.
Okay, it's all about the anatomy, Dagmar, because if you look down the back of the throat, your nose flows into your throat, and at the back of your tongue is your throat, and coming off the front of that pipe that goes down to your stomach, your esophagus, is your trachea, which goes down to your lungs. But on top of that, or over the top of that, is a structure which is your epiglottis, which is a tough, fibrous flap of tissue. And either side of that is a structure on each side called the vallecula, which is a valley, and hence the name. And food going down the back of your throat, or liquids, is deflected around the opening to your trachea, your windpipe, and down these holes or these valleys on either side. So it's a clever mechanism for deflection, but you can, of course, defeat it. And sometimes if you swallow and breathe at the wrong time, you can, unfortunately, inhale things, and they should go the wrong way. Luckily, the nervous system knows that this can happen, and you have a very powerful cough reflex. And if you stimulate the nervous system via that tissue, so anything that touches the tissue in the vocal cords and the opening of the trachea, it triggers a very profound and rapid cough reflex. So it should dislodge anything that does go the wrong way. But normally the anatomy is what takes care of it for you, making sure that things don't go in the wrong hole. And that's what keeps your airway clear of foreign things that shouldn't be in there.
Naked Scientist with us through till 10 o'clock. Your questions via WhatsApp on 072-567-1567. You can jump the queue by calling 021-446-0567. It is nearly 10 minutes from 10 o'clock. Ursula wants to know, our headache tablet knows it must fix a headache.
Hi, Ursula. Yeah, great question. And the answer is that the headache pill does not know where the pain is. The way that pain works is that it is a process of inflammation. And what I mean by that is that the nervous system is sensitive to various molecules, which are inflammatory molecules, which are produced at the site of injury. So if I cut my finger, I will directly hurt some nerves, but also I will do damage to tissue, which will lead to the production of inflammatory chemicals in that particular area, and those inflammatory chemicals will activate local pain nerves and make that area hurt more. So my attention is drawn to that particular region. If I pop a pill as a painkiller, it goes everywhere in my body, but these painkillers are targeting the chemical process that makes those inflammatory chemicals. And if you take aspirin as an example, aspirin, acetylsalicylate, inhibits an enzyme called cyclooxygenase that makes inflammatory chemicals called prostaglandins. So the aspirin goes everywhere in your body, but you're only activating these cyclooxygenase enzymes to make these inflammatory chemicals where the pain is. Therefore, the aspirin inhibits the cyclooxygenase and stops you making the inflammatory chemicals where you would make them. And similarly, if you've got a headache and you pop a painkiller, the painkiller goes everywhere in your body, blocks up the process of making these inflammatory chemicals everywhere, and it's only in your head that you're trying to make the inflammatory chemicals to give you a headache, and that's where it stopped. And that's where you get the pain relief.
Peter's got a question. He's on the line. Welcome, Peter. Go ahead for the Naked Scientist.
Timothy West. I'd like to ask the Naked Scientist, he was talking about the intake of water being very important in good health. Is the intake of water via tea or coffee or any other sort of hot water drink as effective as taking water in by itself?
Hi, Peter. Well, we know that the key thing to do is to stay hydrated. Now, some people don't like drinking just water. They find that a bit boring. And if you drink a beverage like tea or coffee, it perks you up because it's tasty. You want to drink it, but it's also got some caffeine in it, which is it's addictive and it's motivating. I love it. I thrive on the stuff. So it is a way of getting water into your body in a tastier way. But in terms of what happens, once all this stuff hits your stomach, the stomach doesn't care whether the fluid came in as orange juice, as apple juice, as tea, as coffee, because those beverages are a huge amount of water with some other chemicals and molecules in there to give them the taste, the characteristics and the flavours that they have. And those other things all get sorted out in the intestines. What moves across the membranes a bit through your stomach, but mostly in your small intestine, are the water molecules, which then get absorbed into the body and go round your system. Now, one wrinkle here is that because there are other chemicals in beverages like tea and coffee, including things like caffeine, they can be a diuretic, so you can actually provoke extra water loss from the body if you drink some of these beverages, because they interrupt the ability of the kidney to concentrate urine a little bit. Therefore, you lose a bit more water from your body as urine than you otherwise would if you didn't have that diuretic effect, but you're still net hydrated because you've drunk more than you would otherwise have taken into your body. You just lose it a bit faster. So the evidence is if you drink pure water, I say pure in inverted commas, so just clear water, that's probably going to stay in your body for a bit longer than if you drink something with a diuretic effect like tea and coffee, but they're still having a net hydrating effect. Otherwise, everyone like me, who exclusively ends up drinking tea and coffee and virtually nothing else, would end up like a prune in no time.
Okay, a question about yawning. We know it's contagious. You've told us that. We've spoken about that amongst humans. But if my dog yawns right after I do, is he also actually catching my yawn?
It
That's
could
one
be,
question.
but it could be a coincidence, because I've tried this myself to see, because we know humans catch yawns off each other because we all watch each other, and there's an evolutionary reason why yawns are contagious, probably because in our evolutionary history, we would have hung out as small groups in a vulnerable situation in Africa somewhere where things wanted to eat us. And if one person's dropping off, then it's likely everyone's also feeling the urge to drop off. And therefore, if you make yawning contagious, it's more likely at least someone will stay awake long enough to spot the arriving danger and alert everybody. So I thought, well, can an animal cause that kind of contagious yawning in a human? The answer is that they can, because we watch animals, and if we see them yawning, it can make us want to yawn. But do they have the same psychological connection? Can they catch yawns off us? I've tried to make my dog yawn by yawning a lot, but it doesn't seem to work. So I'm not sure if it's just me and my dog, or whether dogs will fail to catch yawns contagiously in the same way that we do. I need to look into that. It's a very interesting question as to whether anyone's done the study and done it plausibly to see whether yawning is contagious among other species, not just between them and us, but between them and their peers. So I'm going to have that as homework and see if I can find some good studies on whether dogs can give each other yawning in the same way as we can transmit yawns to each other.
On the topic of homework, you have homework.
Yes, I do.
Hempcrete, you were going to go back and come back to Edel on that one.
Yeah, I had a look at this, and hempcrete was featured in the Chelsea Flower Show in London this year, and people were extolling the virtues of this material as something which is a carbon neutral or net carbon negative building material. It is basically the woody stems of the hemp plant pushed into blocks by what we call a binder, which is hydrated lime. And it sets a bit like concrete, but is a lot lighter than concrete. It's fireproof and also has very good energy characteristics. So it can retain heat and keep out the cold and keep in the heat. So you've got something which has a good thermal performance. It doesn't have good strength, so you couldn't build a house out of this stuff unless you had other ways of supporting the structure and then using this to clad the building or whatever. But certainly the energy credentials are quite good. And although it takes energy to make the lime, you've got to take limestone and cook it in a kiln, which usually uses energy, and that's going to liberate CO2 from the lime. As the setting process goes on, when you hydrate the lime, turn it into the binder, mix it with the hemp, and then you take into account the fact that hemp used some CO2 from the air to grow in the first place, you can actually show that it generally ends up as carbon neutral or a bit carbon negative once you've actually made it. Of course, you've got to factor in getting it to the site, making it in the first place, then the carbon footprint of the person who builds the building, all that kind of thing. So it's more difficult and more subtle than just saying this material. But as the material alone, it does have quite good carbon credentials, but it is not strong, tough like concrete. It wouldn't stand the sort of compressive load that concrete does. And therefore, you would have to use it in a restricted way. You couldn't just build a house out of it.
Let's squeeze in that smelly question there quickly, Joe.
Hi, Clarence. Will you please ask the naked scientist, how does your body know what's a fart and what is not a fart? Because accidents.
Yeah.
I think what's being asked here is the difference between a fart and a shart, and the latter being a fart with some fecal products added in. And the answer is that the nervous system in the vicinity of the end of your bottom is extremely good at this level of discrimination in a healthy person. But it can go wrong, and in people with spinal injuries and also in people who have bad hemorrhoids and have to have surgery to correct that problem, and people who have surgery for other issues in that region, you can disrupt the nerve supply and you can make it so people do find that discrimination more difficult, and also the level of control needed to make sure that what should stay in stays in and what can come out comes out. So it's down to the nervous system and very careful control, coordinated control of the sphincter to keep things where they need to be and to release things that need to be released.
A fine line, you say, Dr. Chris Smith, our naked scientist every Friday.